First up, Douglas Murray from the Center for Social Cohesion. Thank you so much for joining us on rather short notice, Douglas. I appreciate it. I'm calling you in particular because Baroness Warsi, a woman I've never heard of before, is apparently a member of the cabinet in the United Kingdom, and she's saying some rather extraordinary things today, and I wanted to get your take on it. So welcome to Secure Freedom Radio.
Yes. Very good to be with you as always, Frank. I think that this is particularly interesting to your listeners in America because what Baroness Warsi, who is one of the chairpeople of the Conservative Party, the government party here in the UK, is saying in a speech she's going to give later today is that, among other things, Britain is, she says, seeing a rise in an acceptable bigotry about Muslims. And secondly is saying that it is a great mistake to separate Muslims into extremists and moderates. This is not a surprise. Baroness Warsi has a track of questionable and dubious statements in these areas. It should be said, first of all, Baroness Warsi, despite her claim that Britain is somehow sort of bigoted towards Muslims, has done very well here herself. Among other things, she only stood for office once when she failed to get elected and was immediately promoted into the House of Lords by David Cameron, who was very keen to have a female Muslim peer. So she's actually done rather well out of being a Muslim, but she seems to think there's some kind of prejudice against Muslims more generally. I'd love to be prejudiced against, like she's been in her career.
In this way, yes. Douglas Murray, let me just drill down on this question, because it does seem to me that if we cannot differentiate between Muslims who are trying to destroy us, which I think tracks very closely with their adherence to Sharia on the one hand, and those who don't embrace Sharia and don't want to impose it on the rest of us, which you might call moderates or certainly not part of that particular problem. How on earth are we to fight this foe without dealing with all Muslims as the problem?
Well, of course, this is one of the things that is not only happening here, but happening there, obviously with the King testimony. That there are people who come out.
That's Congressman Pete King you're talking about here in the United States. Yeah, go ahead.
Whenever anybody comes out and asks the important questions about the extent of radicalism within Muslim communities in the West and elsewhere, they're always told the same things by the chorus of professional Muslim voices who say, if you talk about this, you are creating the problem. It is not Muslim extremism, the Congressman King who has created the problem. It isn't Muslim extremism, it's people who identify it who are the problem. In which case, all you are meant to do when you are attacked is to roll over because you deserved it. It is a terrible, terrible trap that we are all being led into. The primary problem is not Islamic extremism in this idea. It is our response to Islamic extremism.
Right. You were at the forefront in the United Kingdom, Douglas Murray of the Center for Social Cohesion, in trying to fight this kind of what I think of as information dominance that our enemies are waging with considerable success on both sides of the pond. One of the instruments that they have come to use of late is an institution that you have gone head-to-head with from time to time called Killiam, which has recently, I think is just yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, published a tract that says, well, there are all kinds of words, 5 in particular, that we mustn't use, including Islamic law or Sharia, that they say, well, it's subject to all kinds of misunderstandings. Douglas Murray, if I'm not mistaken, this is again an example of information dominance denying us an awareness of what we're up against and an inability to address it as such.
Absolutely. It's a classic example of the genre, if I can say so, where instead of so-called moderate Muslim groups like this one that you're talking about, Quilliam, say that they want to tackle extremism. In fact, they end up spending most of their time telling non-Muslims what they should be doing, what they should be saying, what they should be thinking. The people you have to tell this stuff to are the Muslim extremists. If you don't like Sharia, It's not Frank Gaffney and Douglas Murray you should be stopping talking about Sharia. It's the people who want to enforce it across the globe. It's the people who want to use this system to subjugate whole populations. Those are the people you should be talking to Sharia about if you're a so-called reformist Muslim. If you're a so-called reformist Muslim, it shouldn't be people like Frank Gaffney and Douglas Murray that you're saying you shouldn't be talking about jihad. It should be the people who want to use jihad and the ideology of jihad to go and carry out suicide bombings in America, Britain, in the Middle East and across the globe. But again and again we come back to this, the fatal narcissism of our time, the idea that only we cause these things. You know what? I don't think a single suicide bomber decides to detonate because somebody has misused their interpretation of Sharia. No, they do it because they're told what to do through this system of thought.
Yes. Douglas, quickly, we are confronting, of course, another form of this kind of jihad, this kind of Sharia insinuation into our societies. And I think it's rather more evident now in Great Britain, alas, than it is in the United States. For example, the institution of Sharia courts in your country, operating, as I understand it, side by side with English common law, some 87 of these courts. To what extent is this, in fact, evidence of a kind of stealth jihad that is toxic as well as the violent kind and unfortunately being promoted by some of these same folks who would have us ignore or at least not speak of the dangers that you've just described?
Well, exactly. I mean, the thing is, of course, what they say is this is good Sharia. Good Sharia is arbitrating family disputes, arbitrating family law. Bad Sharia, chopping off of hands. This is a terrible trap, another trap that people are falling into. There is no such thing as a good Sharia. It's never been created. It doesn't exist. There is no school of it. And yet, you know, instead of attacking the Sharia that tells people, that dictates to people to behave in ways that most of us would find abhorrent, you get pseudo-moderate organizations coming out saying, no, we must stop other people even the word Sharia. If you can't identify problems, if you can't name them, you're sure as hell never going to solve them.
Well, that's really the rub. And Sun Tzu made it very plain 5,000 years ago. You cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot identify. And Douglas Murray, you're doing a marvelous job in Britain trying to identify and hold to account those who are seeking to insinuate Sharia into your country through one means or another. And we wish you the very best, and thank you for your courage in standing up to it, and most especially for joining us periodically to illuminate it for us, because what you're experiencing there is clearly a foretaste of what's coming for us. So keep up the great work at the Center for Social Cohesion, and come back to us as often as possible to keep us abreast of what's happening.
I look forward to it.
Very good.